Abigail Disney is a philanthropist and filmmaker. Now she's become an outspoken critic of the Walt Disney Company. I'm Tom Powers, and this is Pure Nonfiction. In the last 15 years, Abigail Disney has helped fund close to 100 documentaries. Her grandfather, Roy, was the brother of Walt Disney and co-founder of the company. Abby's father, also named Roy, was a Disney executive who clashed with Michael Eisner and passed away in 2009. 3 years ago, Abby went public with a critique of the company and its then CEO, Bob Iger. Abby wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post titled, "It's Time to Call Out Disney and Anyone Else Rich Off Their Workers' Backs." She describes how in the late 1970s, American executive pay started to grow astronomically while the average worker salary remained relatively stagnant. Now Abby has directed a new documentary titled The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales that expands on her argument. The film is co-directed by Kathleen Hughes and had its world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. In the film, Abby and Kathy follow employees of Disney theme parks as they try to make ends meet during the pandemic and organize for better wages. The film uses the catchy hook of Disney to explore larger issues of economic inequality. This is the second film they've directed together. The first was in 2015, titled The Armor of Light, asking questions about America's gun culture. Prior to that, Kathy had a long career working for Bill Moyers. I interviewed them in January, on the day when The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales was set to make its world premiere. The film attracted substantial press, but is still looking for a distributor. I started our conversation by bringing up Abby's first producing credit on Pray the Devil Back to Hell, about women activists in Liberia. I asked how she chose to focus her philanthropy on film.
Well, when I made my very first film, I didn't start till I was 46 years old. So I always tell people that because I want them to know it's never too late. But taking that film around and showing it and watching what it did in the rooms it played in, it was 78 minutes long, and people were shifted so deeply that I just thought, oh my God, all my life I've been trying to work on getting through on the issue of inequality and racism and all these other injustices. And all this time right under my nose, here was this way to make a profound difference. So that's why I went all in on documentaries.
So, Kathleen, you come from a background of working with Bill Moyers, and you and Abby first collaborated on The Armor of Light, about an evangelical minister who's questioning gun rights advocacy in his community. What did you two appreciate about working together?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think that we both care deeply about these subjects. When it came to the question of guns and the stand your ground laws and the way it was justified, I think we just realized we wanted to start a larger conversation, and we've been putting our minds together, figuring that out ever since.
Yeah, it's so good for me to work with Kathy because she comes with this long experience of getting the job done, getting it done quickly, getting it done clearly, for a guy for whom I have unbelievable respect. And so she was already versed in the social issues. She definitely filled in every hole in my capacities, which are significant. And
oh, come on now.
So it was just a nice complementary set of gifts that we bring to it.
So, Abby, after supporting a lot of other filmmakers to tell their stories and beginning your own directing career with Kathleen, tell me about coming around to realizing that you wanted to tell something that's your own story.
I mean, Pray the Devil Back to Hell was world shifting for me because I could see just how complex the job was, how much you had to let it kind of get into your heart and then fill yourself up. and have no other room for anything else, and how you had to, live it, eat it, and breathe it. So when we started Armor of Light, I loved this process so much. I loved thinking it through, and I loved finding ways to think differently about, entrenched social problems. So where I've landed in my filmmaking is really, Kathy and I both, we don't want to make films that are exclamation points. We want to make films that are question marks. We want to start conversations. We don't want to declare positions. We just want to trigger conversations that we feel aren't being had, that are important.
It's not that normal for someone with inherited wealth to criticize the system that creates that wealth. And I wonder what it is in your life experience that, gave you the urge to do that.
Well, I guess I was always a little bit the black sheep in the family. I always, and I was a black sheep by not being a black sheep. I was like the truth teller and the earnest one and a Girl Scout, and I always wanted to be, a hero. And that just led me into conflict with my family, whose politics were deeply different from my own, even before I even understood my politics. It's hard to choose to step forward and say something about the company that, that it basically has been the lodestar of my life. And I'm proud of that company. I'm deeply proud of that company, and I'm proud of what my grandfather accomplished as Walt's brother. But I mean, I have been troubled some more for a long time. And I'm tired of saying I have no power. I mean, I have one power, and it's the use of this name. And I can't not use it.
Kathleen, when you're making a film about Disney, even with someone named Disney, I wonder what some of the challenges are that you face, even just, filming Disney iconography, filming Disney property. It's a famously litigious company that, fiercely protects all of its imagery.
True. We were very careful with all that. We had a great archive team, great lawyers, great editor, and on the flip side, Disney having an Abigail Disney to say I'm making a film with Abigail Disney also opens doors. People want to talk to Abigail Disney, or any Disney, I guess, maybe. But it's a double-edged sword in that regard. But I think we. We managed.
It certainly narrows the field of potential buyers.
Well, I did want to come around. I'm going to come around to asking about that in a minute. One of the ways in which we feel in the film a presence of lobbyists is there's an occasion where Abigail is testifying before Congress about workers' pay and workers' protection, and some of the Congress people are questioning or objecting to the fact that your cameras are filming this congressional hearing, which seemed very surprising to me because, I watch documentaries with congressional hearings being filmed all the time. It was highly surprising. And in the voiceover, Abby says that, that you later learned that Disney lobbyists had put some pressure on Congress people on both sides of the aisle over that testimony, and tried to get the session adjourned to not give that testimony. So, there's a different example of perhaps pressure that you might have felt.
Absolutely, we felt it all the time. Even if they weren't bringing the pressure, we were feeling the pressure, which is part of the strategy behind being that litigious and being that aggressive in lobbying and so forth. It's amazing the suppressive quality it has. But, we wanted to make the best film we could possibly make. And, if they want to come for me, then they can come for me. I've seen them do it to my father in the past. And I know what it looks like. and feels like, and I feel like I can handle that.
You mentioned in the film that you grew up watching your father try to battle Disney from the inside on two different occasions, and really feeling a backlash, receiving a backlash in the press, and so you saw the power of Disney to defend its territory even against someone named Disney. You just mentioned that briefly in the film, and it's a different story. But I wonder if you can elaborate a little on on what you saw your father go through.
Yeah, in fact, the publicist who sort of orchestrated this whole thing, Xenia Mucha, is still there, and so I feel like I'm reprising history a little bit. My father had believed that Michael Eisner had failed to do an adequate job at the company as CEO for quite a number of years, and he'd been working hard to have the board look at his record and judge him by his record rather than his reputation. And he really worked every angle from the inside that you could work, which is what's so frustrating about board capture when CEOs really, really capture the board. They're not, Disney especially lavishes people they like with free tickets to the park and tickets to premieres and all this kind of special stuff. And once they have you, people don't want to give that stuff up. So when my father resigned from the board and issued a public statement laying out the problems, the company went straight into attack mode. And they don't tend to do it directly. They tend to do it through surrogates and emissaries. And I've already been on the receiving end of a little bit of that, not as much as they can do, certainly. But they attacked him in a really personal way, in a way that really hurt. The idiot nephew thing. There are things people are prepared to believe about you when you've inherited money that are really complicated. And, I'm not complaining. God, I always have to say that. But, people are prepared to believe you're stupid, you're lazy, you've never done anything right, you've never worked a day in your life, and all of that kind of thing. How dare you bite the hand that feeds you? These are the things I hear again and again and again, and so when you make an argument, all the attacks are ad hominem, or ad feminine in my case. And so I watched my dad take those slings and arrows and hold his head high. And they were dirty. They were fighting dirty, and he still held his head high because he knew he was right, and he kept going forward. I respected that. I learned so much from that. He was a hero.
I think Xenia Mucha, Xenia Mucha, is that her name?
Xenia Mucha, I think she just retired.
Yeah.
And didn't they announce her pay package as well in the last?
Just for the last year, $7 million. Yeah.
Just for
as bonus.
Yeah,
and I think that was her bonus for retiring. But she's been there forever.
Clearly, she served them well.
Yes, clearly.
Kathleen, I start off describing this as Abigail telling her own story, but I think I should emphasize that in the film, you're centering the stories of Disney workers who are fighting for better pay and working conditions. And Kathleen, I wonder what you learned in those encounters, following several of these people over the course of more than a year. Some of them you're following before COVID begins, and then into COVID, and then when the park reopens.
Well, it's a good question. We learned about how hard they all work, first of all. And if I can even back up for a second, there was definitely always a lot of, especially once we got to the edit, of tension about making sure that the film was as much about the workers and about the American economic system as it was about Abby. And we really had to balance that. And Abby did not want anyone to walk away thinking she'd made a film about herself. So we really, the workers were really generous with us, with their time, with their stories. And I think the main thing that we learned is that they work as hard as they can, and they still can't make ends meet. And that's just really... And that in so many ways they are just like so many other American workers. I mean, we've reached a point in this country where hard work doesn't guarantee you, a living, which is crazy.
Perhaps the twist with them is that they're supposed to be working somewhere where everyone is expected to be happy, which is maybe not the same as a Purdue meatpacking plant.
Well, it's actually required of them that they smile, but Disney doesn't cover dental. And I've had cast members say, yeah, I can't smile unless I get my teeth fixed. I'm just not, I can't afford to go to the dentist. That feels to me like one of those ultra ironic stabs in the heart. Just can't stand it.
Yeah.
And not the only one. Kathleen, I'd love you to tell a little bit about the story of the parking lot that you recount in this film, which in 1996, the city of Anaheim took out a $500 million bond, partly to build a parking lot for Disney, which then leased to Disney for $1 a year, even though Disney gets to keep all the revenue and profits. You were drawing upon some local reporting to tell that story. You're drawing upon the viewpoints of a city councilman in Anaheim. So you're not the first people to draw out this story, but it still remains shocking.
It is a shocking story. The LA Times did it, and you can look it up, did a beautiful multi-part series about the billions of dollars in tax breaks that Disney took from, received over a course of 20 years from the city of Anaheim. And I mean, the thing that's so incredible about it is how typical it is that this is how, this is the way corporate America rolls these days in a sense. They come in and they take as much as they can get in terms of tax breaks, low wages, you name it. The whole point is to send all the money to the top and not to spread it out. So in this case, this was part of a larger, community development plan. And, I can't say exactly that Disney wrote the plan, but they were very influential in how the terms of the deal came out. And
the people of Anaheim are still paying down and will be paying that down. And as one of the stipulations of the agreement, they can't use any surplus they have to fund firefighting or emergency services or anything else.
Pensions.
Every penny of surplus they get annually has to be put into paying down that debt. And at the end of the term, Disney owns the property. So there is absolutely no way that you can argue that this was good for the people of Anaheim. There's absolutely no justification.
But that's what Disney says. Disney says they generate, they're the engine, they're the economic engine. So, it justifies all of this.
I mean, it's a good example of what people mean when they describe socialism for the rich. And that reminds me, when you're testifying in Congress, when we see you testifying in Congress in 2019, there's a Republican congressman who invokes words like socialism and Marxism to label you. And those words are so demonized in American culture that once they're attached to you, like you're immediately fighting this different battle to recontextualize them. I wonder in this, as you fought these battles, what it means to kind of work around that rhetoric and that vocabulary.
Yeah, I can't help but laugh when they say these things because I'm a trust fund baby. How can I be a socialist and a trust fund baby at the same time? It just makes no sense. What I'm trying to do is ensure that there's a company, a privately, or held by shareholders company that is managed with an eye toward everybody's well-being. There's nothing about that that's not capitalist. And in fact, if you want to save capitalism, you better change it and change it fast. Because people are angry. So I kind of ignore those kinds of charges because they're just not worthy of my attention. And I think that we shouldn't engage with them because that's like setting off a firecracker to distract someone so you can escape out the side door. If they call me a socialist because they really don't have an argument.
They don't want to have the conversation. I mean, that's the point. It's a showstopper.
Abby, since you began speaking out, writing editorials, speaking on television about questions of inequality and corporate role in inequality, I wonder, what you've experienced from your peer group of other philanthropists, and even within your own family. I see that your brother and sister, Susan and Tim, are listed as as executive producers of this project. So that's an endorsement of family support. What else has that meant in as you're being outspoken in your family and friend relationships?
You know what? There are members of the family who hate that I do this, and they're very unhappy with me. And I have thought about whether or not, out of consideration for them, I should stay quiet. And I just don't see how that would be good for anybody other than one or two people. So I've had to weigh, the damage here as opposed to the damage there, and go forward. It's not fun to be in conflict with your family. But honestly, there's a very special power in speaking against your own self-interest socially. And I recognize that that's what keeps people listening, because they can't believe what they're hearing. I'm saying raise my taxes, please. And I found a Snopes story because it was so unbelievable to people that I had actually said that. And that is the most depressing thing I can imagine about our country. Is it really so hard to imagine that people would step up for the well-being of the community instead of their own self-interest? That's how massively our norms have shifted onto this Milton Friedman, Ayn Rand's every man for himself ethic. And it's killing us.
So we're speaking a few hours before the film is going to have its world premiere at Sundance. Abby, you mentioned earlier that this film will have some different challenges going out into the world of distribution than other films, as it challenges basic corporate labor practices that even companies that aren't directly affiliated with Disney have to feel some sensitivity around. So I wonder how you're thinking about this film making its way out into the world, although it may be premature to be asking you right now since no one has even yet seen it.
Yeah. So I believe in the film. I believe we made a good film, and I think people are going to be interested in watching it. Disney has this amazing sticking power and power of attraction for audiences. So there's a natural curiosity in the mainstream public, more than just in your typical documentary audience. So I'm hoping that we crack that and get out into a wider audience, because this needs to affect the way people vote and the way people think about taxes and the way people think about norms. I know, yes, we lose a few streamers before we even get to market. That's really all right with me, because honestly, if I have to stand on a street corner with a megaphone on a soapbox, I'm going to make sure we get heard, because this is just too important. It's really not right, and it's completely unfair that I have a bigger, broader platform to work from than somebody else, because I'm not an idiot. I have this platform because I inherited it. But if I don't take this platform and use it for the public good, then shame on me.
I want to thank Abigail Disney and Kathleen Hughes for speaking with me. Their new film is The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and is now looking for distribution. See our show notes for links to further articles and interviews with Abby detailing her critique of Disney and the growth of inequality. Thanks to our team, series producer Hannah Norden-Swan and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, and our executive producer is Raphael Nehausen. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Pure Nonfiction. I'm Tom Powers. You can follow me on Twitter at THOM Powers. You can read our show notes and sign up for our newsletter at purenonfiction.net.